Mr. Nintendo, please put this shirt in Age of Calamity. Alright, we are finally talking about The Legend of Zelda. I've been wanting to make a video focusing on Breath of the Wild pretty much since I started this channel. Unfortunately for me, a million things have already been said. I don't want to say I like the game for reason A and dislike it for reason B. It's been said and done plenty the past 3 years. Me saying the same thing in 2020 really brings nothing new to the table. So after letting the game stew in the back of my mind for a couple of years now, I feel like I finally have something new enough to add to the conversation. One of the more common critiques I've heard people mention when bringing up Breath of the Wild is, it's a good game, but it's not a good Zelda game. And I don't want to point at this kind folk and call them wrong, but they're wrong. Or rather they're right, but they aren't looking at the entire picture, so they're wrong. You see, Breath of the Wild deviates from the established Zelda formula, but in doing so, it's the truest Legend of Zelda game. Now, before we get into that, let's talk about this Zelda formula. Over the last 30 some odd years, the Zelda series from a gameplay perspective has built a reputation as an adventure game all about puzzles and dungeons. The basic loop of each game is you find a dungeon, solve some puzzles, get a cool little doodad, and beat a boss. You're collecting MacGuffins, which eventually culminates in you finding Gungle-Doo. Sometimes he's a dude, other times he's a pig, it's semantics. You have a pretty cool overworld to explore at your own pace, where you can get some cool goodies like heart containers, but as a whole, these games are mostly linear experiences that put their most compelling gameplay elements in the dungeons. Maybe switch out the unique gimmick of a wolf for motion controls, but other than that, I've basically explained the core of the Zelda formula. And from here on out, I'll be referring to these games as formula games, which I don't mean in a bad way. Each of these games have their own merit that is often derived from that linear formula. But it is a pattern. Mr. Aaron Egoraptor Hansen made a video where he criticized the questing elements of Zelda games. And while I don't completely agree with his opinions at the time, he's not wrong in saying that the series heavily leaned into those rigid, structured experiences. So when Breath of the Wild came out, the drastic departure from formula staples was a breath of fresh air to some, and a wild shark jump for others. You like what I did there? Alright, so Breath of the Wild. Completely different experience. In the tutorial, you get your main phone apps and a parachute from Santa Claus, and from there on out, the world is your oyster. They still offer a guiding hand, but really you can head out in any direction you want. If you're really feeling it, you can head straight to Gunga's Fork himself, right after the tutorial. The dungeons have downsized to mini puzzles, or more often than not, mini puzzles. The focus just really isn't on those parts of the game. It's all about exploring the overworld, and the shrines are just a fun little place to do some puzzles and collect heart containers. The quest lines are completely inverted. Breath of the Wild has the same trace elements as formula games, but because of how the bigger picture is assembled, Breath of the Wild is considered not a real Zelda game in the eyes of some. Like I said before, they're wrong because it's really the most Legend of Zelda game that there is. But I'm being a bit of a cheeky bungus right now when I say it's the most Legend of Zelda game that there is. I'm not referring to the franchise as a whole, but just to the original game. Miyamoto has mentioned in multiple interviews that the inspiration for the Zelda series was his childhood memories of exploring the great outdoors. In an NPR interview, he mentions how he came across a lake while hiking and climbing the mountains near Kobe as a kid to design the original Legend of Zelda. And sure, there's a princess to be saved, a pig to be fought, and some cool thingamabobs that you collect along the way to make it all happen. But really the core of this game is about traversing the big world. Looking at this game in current year, we know about the dungeons and the objectives of the game, but for most people playing back in 1986, these were not established staples that they were looking out for. When the game first came out, you were a little green dude and all you had was space to explore. Obviously, at the time there were a lot of hardware restrictions. Venturing across an epic land, making discoveries is a really limited experience when you only got like 10 pixels to work with. But you know, jump forward to 2017 and isn't Breath of the Wild that exact same experience? It doesn't adhere to the formula that's been used since Link to the Past way back in 1991. Fujibayashi and Aonuma may have been in charge of Breath of the Wild, but they were creating a fully realized version of the experience Miyamoto was inspired by. Heck, they even have the mountain climbing that he references in some of those interviews. So, who's right and who's wrong? Well, I definitely egged people in one direction with my clickbaity title, but honestly, it's a bit more complex than a simple right and wrong. I'm not trying to gatekeep and dictate what is or isn't a Zelda game. I'm just some goon on the internet. Rather, I suggest that we create categories that will better expand the Zelda identity. It's a lot less diverse, but we could define subgenres for the Zelda series similar to the way Nintendo groups 3D Mario games. Now, for those who don't know, sometime around Mario Odyssey's release, Nintendo put out a little chart categorizing Mario games into two types: open sandbox exploration style and get to the goal games. Matty Thorson and Barry Kramer break down these differences in better detail, so, go check out their thoughts if you're interested in hearing more about it. But to sum it all up, Mario gets to have a diverse pool of gameplay experiences that are all unified under the more general umbrella of platformer. So let's do the same for the Zelda series. I propose the Legend of Zelda game's parallel progression chart. I couldn't find an official name for the 3D Mario chart, so I'm just gonna make something up here. We have the linear puzzle and dungeon formula games that the franchise has built a reputation upon, and the exploration-based games that put a greater emphasis on the overworld. Personally, I don't think pinholing a series into strict guidelines for all eternity is the way to go. It certainly has its benefits and allows a series to better flush out that identity, but if massive IPs like Mario or Zelda don't stretch outside of its known comfort space, the games can only grow so much. Mario has had the luxury of letting this multifaceted identity develop pretty much since the beginning. We've seen a good mix of linear and sandbox releases over the last 35 years, and while the Zelda games don't have that same balanced pattern, I think it's well worth giving them that same freedom, because personally I'd like to see iterations on both types of games. And who knows, maybe somewhere down the line the Hyrule Warriors games will gain enough support that it can also be considered a true Zelda game and not just a third-party spin-off. Probably not, but wow, look at that, I just mentioned a relevant game so I can tag it in my SEO. Thanks again for watching. Hello and thanks again for watching the video. I'm William Billingsworth, Tea Leaf Entrepreneur. Sadly, Isaac did not have time to include his thoughts on the Metroid series. In summary, when Nintendo attempted to expand that series' identity, the fans were not happy. Other M and Federation Force both abandoned the themes of isolation that the series had built itself upon. That being said, I think this is probably the worst British accent in history. Thanks for watching, and let me know down in the comments what games you'd like to see expand their identity, and in what way. Thanks again for watching. William Billingsworth out.